Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking to you about how HR leadership can get leverage and influence over the leadership team. So we're now into step 5, which is all around making influence happen in the impact and influence blueprint that's leading you to more hyper HR presence. So we're going to get into the 3 elements around step 5, and this is going to be the first one, which is all around leverage, and what I'm calling the leverage loader. Because if you think about it, the more leverage you can get over your leadership team, the more likely it is for you to influence them, right? So let's talk about the 3 things that you can be thinking about, or rather you can adopt, that's definitely going to get you that leverage and influence. You see, think about it from this perspective. Think about the information that you provide to your leaders on a regular basis. We need to load them with the right information, the right bit of data that will help them make a decision easily and decisively. Because when you do that, they value that. Right? You know, if you give me information where it makes sense to me, I can make a decision and I can make it quickly, great. That's a good bit of information. That's a good bit of data. So what does that look like? So what I want you to think about is this: quantitative leverage. What do I mean by quantitative leverage? Quite simply, quantitative data. Now, we know that there are leaders within our organizations that are all about the numbers. They want numbers, they want the percentages, they want the facts, they want the figures. They want the quantitative data in order to be able to make a decision, which is different to those leaders who want the qualitative. Like, the qualitative leverage is really all about, well, who did you speak to? You know, qualitative leverage would sound like this: oh, I spoke to the CEO and the CEO wants this done and they want it done by the end of the week. All right, that's qualitative leverage, right? Who did you speak to? Yeah. How do you know? What's the word on the street? How do you know that the numbers are adding up? Who have you spoken to about it? So getting that qualitative leverage. And again, I want you to kind of think about this in this context of how people need a context to think and decide. So contextual thinkers are kind of like, they're the people who want that qualitative leverage. They want that qualitative data. They need a context in which to understand why they should do something or not do something. Give me the context. So we know there's certain leaders that they require the context. Let's talk about it. Let's have a meeting. Let's call the whole team together, and then we can present them with what you want to do, and let's see what they say. That's a contextual thinker, which is different to an analytical thinker. Analytical thinkers are like those people who need, or those leaders who need the quantitative level, want the quantitative data because they want to read it. They're like, oh, let me sleep on it. Send me an email. Let me make my own assessment. Let me make my own analysis of the figures and the facts and the numbers, right? So thinking about this, when you give them that right information, right, to quote The Godfather, you end up giving them a bit of information that, ultimately you make them an offer they can't refuse. It's like a no-brainer, because you present the data, you present the information in such a way that you are getting leverage over them, that it is kind of resonating with the way in which they're thinking. So thinking about these, right? Next thing I want to talk to you about is lead and lag measures. And I don't have the time to go into deep dive into this, but I want to talk to you about lead versus lag measures because they're very influential. And they do get leverage when it comes to deciding what we should do or shouldn't do within the HR context. So lag measures, there's lots and lots of lag measures that you currently capture. What happened last week? How many people left last week? How many promotions, how many vacancies, who was sick, who was absent, etc., etc. Those are all lag measures. We need to get into lead activities and lead measures which allow us to predict, allow us to be able to provide a prescription. And I want to kind of give you a context in which to think about this, right? So think about a lead and lag activity. And I want to take, typically, we want to reduce turnover. So what do? We measure turnover and we start doing exit interviews, which gives us the data as to why people are leaving. But you know what? It's too late. I've already handed in my resignation. I'm leaving. So therefore, there's nothing you can do about it. It's a rock. So we've got to think about an activity that we could measure that's going to give us a prediction as to why I would leave. And this is where we start to we still would do exit interviews, but we start to focus on what I call stay interviews, right? So these stay interviews, you sit down with me and you go, Omar, if you were to think about leaving the organization, what would make you leave? Or if you thought about jumping ship, what would have happened in order for you to think, oh, I need to jump ship? And I might turn around to you and say, well, if there was no career progression and there was a lack of recognition, right? If you want to fire me, don't give me any career progression and don't recognize me. Because I've already told you that would be a predictor. That would give you a lead indicator as to why I would leave the organization. Now, if you want to hold on to me, then of course you're going to recognize me and you're going to make sure that I have career progression. Make sense? It's simple. But I really urge you to kind of think about this in terms of how many lead activities are you doing? How many lead measures do you have versus your lag? So again, these are big influences. So when you think about these sort of three areas, that quantitative versus qualitative, you've got to balance that information, right? Can't just be all like, typically engagement scores are all about, they're predominantly about quantitative data, but what's driving the quantitative data? Because really that's where the real influence comes in. It's not just about who's engaged, who's disengaged, and who's in neutral. What is creating that scenario? And you've got to speak to people about it. You've got to get that quantitative data. Why? Because you have leaders who are analytical in their thinking and contextualizing their thinking. They want the context. And then last, but not least, thinking about your lead activities and measures over your lag measures and activities. Cool. So that's what I wanted to share in this video, just real quick. In my next video, I want to get into, the U in the second element of making influence happen, where it's all about great HR management is about making leaders uncomfortable. So interesting video, but is it about making them comfortable or is it about making them uncomfortable? Well, hopefully you'll join me on my next video. Okay, take care for now and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.